1 over GM is usually a small number, and with reasonably large RS2, this is really best case. This is a gain of 1, really. So the last stage is not going to give you any gain, but it's there to give you small output resistance. You remember you need small output resistance to then connect it to a load and don't lose your gain, right? So that's what it does.
So just clarification, finding the output resistance of that stage is just looking into the transistor from the output.
Yeah. What do you see?
1 over GM.
No. RS2 parallel with the GM.
The 2 on code. Okay.
No, but close.
Assuming lambda is 0.
So looking back into this, if I want to calculate the output resistance, I put a test voltage there, right? And I then get rid of all the. I'm not sure about this one. So the reason is that, see here, looking in the gate, there's actually a resistor. Okay, so we need to make sure that resistor is not going to do anything to our output resistance. So I'm not yet convinced that that's because the gate is the small model. The gate is connected to an RD, and RD gets connected to ground, right? So in other words, I want to make sure that whatever that is in the gate is not going to affect what I see in the source, right? If this was BJT, I was sure that it does. It does affect it. If you look at it, so if you have a BJT, so let's actually do this right here. Although this was a discussion for a different chapter, but it's all right. We can do it at any time, as long as we don't have to redo it. So let's say you have a transistor BJT. You have an RE here, and this is your V out. But there is an equivalent resistance RB here in the base. Okay, and now you look back and you want to see what's the equivalent resistance that you see here. Looking back. So let's do the model, a small signal model. So you have RB and then R pi and then RE. And this is GMVVE. Let's assume lambda is large. I'm sorry, 0. So R naught. We don't need to deal with R naught. That's R pi. That's my RB. And this is my test voltage. VT, IT, and R out is equal to VT divided by IT. So that's what we need to do, right? Okay. So with that in mind, this is B, this is E, this is C. So we're gonna have that current here. Let's see if we have another current there. Down to. So VBE being VB minus VE is equal to this current, let's call it IB, which is IB, doesn't matter. And this is same IB. So VB is actually minus IB or B, and VE is RB IE KCL ITA plus GMVBE E plus IB is equal to IE. What equations do I have left?
BJT ones just I is equal to, you can relate IB and IE together with beta.
So I can write that as beta IT. Yes, that's what you're saying, right?
And also RE is beta over beta plus 1 IE.
So that comes out that this is the result of case.
Are those two,
What?
are those two, notations interchangeable whether you use beta IE or GM?
Yeah.
So they're exactly the same?
Yes.
Okay, so then why would you need to include beta IE? Why wouldn't you just use GM?
You can. I think you can. So let's stick with GMVB and see how that's going to turn out. So now VE is actually my VT, right? VE and VT are the same. So from this VBE, let's actually write it the way that I wrote it up there. VBE, VB, VE, VB, VE. So VBE would be that minus IB RB minus VT, right? I want to find everything as a function of VT and IT in order to be able to divide them by check. So I have my IT, VBE is still not quite there. I need to do something about IB to get rid of IB over there. And then I have IB itself.
Isn't VBE negative VT? Since 0 minus VT,
What's 0?
the ground on the left, you change IB times VT.
How?
Your VE is VT, so 0 minus
Why are you
VT.
saying 0?
Because we're looking at ground, and we're going over the RB and now I'm fine.
So so IB is equal to 0 minus VB divided by RB.
No, VT over RB plus R pi.
Okay, that's good. So 0 minus VT over RB plus R pi. Yeah. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Good. So now we have IB as that becomes VT divided by RB plus R pi minus VT, right? Times RB. Good. Now it's started to look good. So IT plus GM, instead of VBE, I write that GM VT times RB over RB plus R pi minus 1, right? plus, now IB is that, minus VT divided by RB plus R pi is equal to IB, which is VT divided by RE. And we have the equation over. Okay, let's do the math. Double check whatever we did so far. So I wrote KCL up there. That's IT. GM, that's VBE, as we wrote it over there, right? Plus IB, as we wrote it down there. Is equal to IE right there. So let's move all the VTs to one end. So VT times GM R, what's that R? E. RB over RB plus R pi plus minus 1, right? Minus G. Minus G. Minus GM minus 1 over
RB plus R.
That would be minus 1, right? Over RB plus R pi
Minus 1 over RE.
minus 1 over RE is equal to minus IT.
Yeah.
So VT divided by IT is equal to 1 over RE plus 1 over RB plus R pi plus GM minus RB, GM RB over RB plus R pi. So I take GM out of this, that would be R pi over RB plus R pi.
RB over plus.
What?
I think that's RB on top.
No, I take GM out of this, these two. So it would be RB plus R pi minus RB would be R pi. Why did the sign split? What?
It's equal negative IT. So 5 both sides are negative.
Oh, it was
So
negative
that would be 1
Okay.
over RE plus 1 over RB plus R pi plus GM R pi over RB plus R pi. So, take home message, RB is going to actually show up in the output resistance. Now, if you actually do the work here a little bit more, what you're going to find out is that this is actually 1 over RE in parallel to RB plus R pi divided by beta plus 1. GMR pi is beta. Okay, so it's like looking back here, there's an R pi and there's an RB. It transfers it here and divides it by beta. So whatever that you see in the base gets divided by beta. R pi divided by beta is RE. So you see, instead of this, you can actually remove that and say, I see here RE plus RB divided by beta. And the two are in parallel to each other. Again, that means that when you look in the emitter of a transistor, BJT, you don't only see 1 over GM. 1 over GM, by the way, is RE. In BJT, 1 over GM and RE are the same thing. Okay, So you don't only see 1 over GM or RE, and instead you see 1 over GM RE in series with whatever resistor you have in the base divided by the beta. GMRP is beta. These are relationships that they have to each other. So there's a transfer of resistor from the base to the emitter. So what you have in the base is actually going to affect what you see in the emitter. And you can actually do the reverse of that. Looking from the base, the resistance that you see is not only R pi, if you have RE here. What happens is that you see R pi plus beta times RE. That's actually easy to do too. You put your V-test here now, and you have RE down there. This one is actually a lot easier to do. So you do a beta transfer going from emitter to base or base to emitter. Whatever that is in the emitter gets multiplied by the beta, shows up in the base. Whatever that is in the base gets divided by the beta, shows up in the emitter.
Does this like principle also apply for MOSFETs?
Now let's look at that for MOSFET. That's where the discussion started, right? So with the MOSFET, at least we're sure that there is no such thing when we go from source to the gates, because gate is open, right? So what you have in the source is not going to have any effect on the gate. I think that's true when you go from gate to source too. Let's just make sure, 100% sure, that what you see in the source is not going to affect what you have. Quite honestly, by reciprocity, it has to be like that. But let's make 100% sure.
What about the gate drain and gate source capacitances? Based on frequency?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a capacitor in the base and you're looking at it from the emitter, the impedance of that capacitor is going to get divided by beta showing up in the emitter. And the other way around, if you have a capacitor in the emitter and you're looking at it from the base, the impedance of that capacitance is going to get multiplied by beta and show up in the base. In other words, the capacitor in the emitter, the capacitance value in the emitter, when you're looking from the base, because the impedance is increasing, the capacitance, when the impedance is going up, that means that the capacitance value is actually going down. Because the impedance of a capacitor and its capacitance is 1 over C omega, right? They're inversely proportional.
Right, so you have a really high resistor value, essentially, that you have to calculate for when finding out resistance, right? Because these things are so small. So maybe that's what there is.
If you want to take them into account, yes.
Okay.
So when we continue our discussion on frequency response, then we're going to go back in. So now let's do that with the CMOS. With CMOS, we have the disconnection there. There's nothing in there. So therefore, now if I have an RS now, it's called, and I'm looking from the input here, obviously whatever that is in the RS is not going to affect the input resistance that I look from, because it's already infinity. So what does that mean to affect? Nothing is going to affect infinity. So looking, I guess, back, it should be easy to see that it's not going to affect. So let's say that you do have an RG here. When you put your test voltage here, test voltage and IT, I guess it's safe to say that that's not going to affect this too without doing any analysis, because there's no current again coming from that component of it. So this current is really that current, and this current is nothing else. So you can't see the effect of
What are you saying your VM is?
Right now, there is no VM. Right now, before it was basically your V test.
But before you didn't have it connected to anything, right?
Here we have it connected to that, right?
Okay.
So I'm looking from the back, and I'm just trying to make sure that the fact that it's connected to something is not going to affect what we see looking into this. So with that analogy, it's safe to say that there is no effect of RD on what we see here, and therefore the output resistance would be RS2 just in parallel with 1/GM.
So we were right answering.
Yes.
Okay. So RS in parallel to 1/GM.
And then usually RS is much larger than 1/GM, so the output resistance is about 1/GM. Okay, so this is to get the common mode rejection ratio. This is to add to the gain. That's to get the small output
So a
resistance.
question. So in comparison between MOSFETs and BJT, which one would the MOSFET always have a better output resistance compared to BJT? Since there's like more resistance in BJT.
More resistance to what do you mean by that?
Like for application use.
So you really have to compare the 1/GM of the two and see how the two compare to each other. So because on one end you're limited by RE, and the other one you're limited by 1/GM. RE is really 1/GM in BJT. So you're really limited by GM of the transistor that you're looking for, so that you get 1/GM. When you compare apple to apple, GM of a BJT is actually larger for than the CMOS of the same comparable technology. Okay, because they're built based on completely different features, so it's hard to define apple to apple. But once you did that, if you compare apple to apple, BJT is going to give you larger GM, so a smaller 1/GM. So that's actually why sometimes still today you look at the power amplifiers, some people still use BJT for power amplifiers. Because when you deliver a lot of power, then output resistance is going to be really important. Because the current is large, you're delivering a lot of current, and that current is going to pass through your internal output resistance. So that's going to limit how much waste heat you're going to get inside your power amplifier. You've seen the power amplifiers, they're always connected to these huge heat sinks, because they deliver a lot of current, and that passes through the internal resistance. It generates a lot of waste heat internally. For op amps, that's not that big of a deal, because you don't usually use them to deliver power. Okay, so but this specific way of doing it is not necessarily the best design. There's a chapter in the book that I think it's one of the chapters. We may get to discuss it at least quickly. The whole chapter is dedicated to how to design the output stage of the amplifier. Normally, the output stage is really where do you bias it, basically. They're always the same configuration, meaning that you always do common drain or common collector for that output stage. But where you bias it, it takes some effort to make sure that you don't get a lot of waste heat. So there's a chapter on that where you did that. This is not a good design. This specific design is actually not a good design. The way that they do it with a pair of 2 transistors for the output. So they have one transistor that is either NMOS or NPN, and then they have another one that is a PMOS or a PNP, and half waves that are positive, the current comes out of the top NPN or NMOS, and the other half that is negative, the current comes out of the PNP or PMOS. So they deliver the current, whether it's a positive current or a negative current, out of two different transistors. They're both biased as a common drain or a common collector, but they divide the task of current delivery between two different transistors to improve efficiency. Okay, and if we get time, we're going to discuss that. So in good op amps, actually you see that. You see two transistors that are doing the output stage, as opposed to only one. That is the way that you're seeing here. To tell you a little bit more, what goes on here is that you're limited by 1/GM, right? So your output resistance is really 1/GM. So now let's remember what was 1/G. Like, what is GM? So in other words, how do I reduce GM, right? 1/GM, sorry. How do I reduce it? So in order to reduce 1/GM, to reduce it, what do I have to do to GM? I have to increase GM, right? What was GM in this case? So Kn is process. That I have no control over. Like, once you make the device, that's it. This is, once you have a device, you have a Kn. There's nothing. There's no design there. It's a given, right? But ID I can change. I can make it large. So if I make ID large, then GM is going to be large. Then 1/GM is going to be small, and that's what I want. So to design a really good output stage, what do I need to do? I need to make sure that there's a lot of current passing through that transistor. Then I get smaller and smaller output resistances, right? Well, where's that current going to go? It's going to go through RS2. What do you get there?
High voltage drop.
Well, at this point, you don't really care about high voltage drop. One thing more relevant, heat. You get a lot of waste heat. So the more you want to design a better, like the lower output resistance you aim for, the more heat you generate. In other words, a really good power amplifier is going to be very low efficiency if you do it with this design. So that's the problem with this design. There's an inherent trade-off between efficiency and small output resistance. So that's the trouble with this just single transistor design. But if you're not delivering a lot of power, then you don't care that much about GM. You don't have to push it to the limits. So you can stay with this simple design. This is called a class 1 design, by the way, class A design. And as opposed to other times, A is actually bad. So class A is a bad design.
Will we get into class B, A, B, C, and D amplifiers in this class, or is that more like a feedback and control?
No, that's what I said. Depending on how much progress we have, I think there's a pretty good chance that we're going to cover class B and class C and maybe a little bit of class AB. I don't think there's discussion about class D. There are some class D. Class D, I actually haven't been doing class D myself. So that's out there too, class D.
Speaking of classes, how are each like amplifier like classified? Or is that just something like just came up?
Class A, B, C, that's what you mean?
Yeah, like how's a transistor or an amplifier classified into one of those categories?
I have to tell you
explain,
more.
okay,
That's,
yeah.
that's a chapter.
Different setups.
So it's all about efficiency. So the more efficient they become, class A is the least efficient. This is class A. This is the most lenient too, yes. Okay, so we covered gain, we covered the basically the functionality of each stage. Let me ask you a little bit more now. Why do we have this right there? Yeah. Because if you look at the equation for the gain, the larger that thing is, RS2, this is RS1, right? The larger that thing is, your gain is actually going to go down. If that state is going to give you gain, it looks like that is counterintuitive, like it shouldn't put something like that there. If you were going to design a gain stage, it looks like RS1 is actually reducing your gain. So why would you do it there at all? Reducing heat? That stage is not going to pass much of a current. So for that stage, you want 1/GM to be, generally speaking, GM to be large, but then you can compensate for smaller GMs by larger RD. So you don't have to push it to the limit of passing a lot of current. You actually do the calculations. There are a lot of tricks, and this is the stage that you should start thinking about these very delicate limits of what you could or you can't do. It's an interesting and thought-provoking practice. For example, thinking to yourself, okay, I have a common source with just one transistor. What's the limit of gain that I can get out of it? Like, how much gain can I get out of something? Can I just keep on increasing it based on, there has to be some sort of, somewhere you get limited, right? So it's thought-provoking to start thinking, what are the limits? What's going to limit how much gain I can get out of just one transistor?
Physics.
What physics? That's what I mean. Like now you can write down everything. You can write exactly what the equation for the gain is. With the simple case of a transistor realistically is minus GM times RD in parallel with R naught, right? With that one single stage. But now GM is a function of process parameters and ID. And R naught is a function of process parameters and ID, right? So you can actually write an equation that is only a function of ID and process parameters. And look into, okay, when I increase ID, what happens to the gain? When I decrease ID, what happens to the gain? Should I increase ID or should I decrease ID to get larger and larger gains? Like, if you're serious about this becoming your career, you should start doing these things on your own. I'm not going to ask you these, but these are the kind of thought-provoking things that people in the industry do. That's what they do, right? So minus GM RD in parallel with R naught. It's the gain for that little stage, right? Assuming RS is not there. Let's just simplify. You add to it, it's just going to get more complicated. So what is GM? What is R naught? Yes, right? So it's ID, well, it's actually, it's early voltage divided by ID. That's what it is. Okay? And that is what VA is 1 over lambda, early voltage. So that's a process parameter. That's a process parameter. But now you put that back in there, it looks like actually there is some kind of a balance going on. On one end, you increase ID and you get larger GM, but you increase ID, you get smaller R naught. And the two kind of counter each other. So if you start increasing ID, you don't necessarily get larger gain. You have to look at that and see what that does and what kind of a limit you get out of this. So there are curves. You can curve this and see how it's going to change based on real values. And as it turns out, actually, for the best gain that you get is for a relatively small amount of current that you pass. Depending on the technology, but it's not like you pass more current and you get larger gain. It's because you are not is inversely proportional to current.
Something interesting. So because of that, because GM is actually square root ID and R naught is just to the power of 1, if your ID is sub 1, like having a sub 1 ID means that you'll have more positive benefit than if you're more than 1 ID, 1 unit, I guess. I don't know.
You have to draw, just plug it, but just purely mathematically speaking, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, generally speaking, you can see that increasing ID is not to your benefit. You don't want to just keep on increasing ID.
Yeah.
Your gain, actually, to the limit of increasing ID is going to keep on going down. Not at all.
RS will have anything to do with the common mode range.
Okay, so back to the question we had. Why RS then? You're saying what?
I was saying, maybe, does that have anything to do with the common mode range of your differential?
No.
Are we supposed to be analyzing this just that state?
Yeah. So the answer to that question has a lot to do with the biasing of the circuit, right? If it's not helping with the gain, meaning it's not helping with the small signal, and there's a good reason for it to be there, most likely it has to be in the DC portion of the analysis, right? So when you do the DC analysis for this, there's an inherent, and this is, you can't really do anything about this one that I'm about to tell you. There's an inherent trade-off between stability and gain, okay? So the larger your gain is, the less stable your system is. So RS down there, usually they don't put a large value of RS because that's going to really hurt you in the gain. But they do put a small value of RS because if you don't, your system is going to get unstable. Okay? It has a lot to do with systems with large gain. If there's any positive feedback loop in your system, then they're going to go crazy. Really, really quickly they become unstable. And the positive feedback loops, they usually exist because of the capacitive path. There's always capacitors, residual capacitors. So there's a way for the signal to come from the output and be added to the input. And as soon as that happens, if you have large gain, your system is going to become unstable. It starts oscillating, right? So they put that there to get rid of some of that. In other words, what happens is that if you pass a certain amount of current through this transistor, okay, and you get a certain value of VGS, basically current and VGS, the DC values are related to each other, right? So ID is equal to Kn VGS minus VT to the power of 2. So you set it up so that you get a certain VGS and you get a certain ID based on that. But this current is passing through the transistor, and one thing that it's going to do is to change the transistor. The transistor with a certain Kn is going to be different than the same transistor once there's current passing through it. What do I mean by that? The Kn that you calculate and, or use or measure, and Vt that you calculate and use and measure, they're calculated and measured for a certain condition. They set it up at a certain temperature, right? So you start passing current through the transistor, and the transistor is going to heat up. And as soon as that heats up, this Kn changes. So now your Kn is different. So Kn is different, ID is going to change. In other words, that immediately changes VGS. So you get a different, with the same value, with the same circuit, now your current goes up. The current goes up, and then it heats up more. And it just, it's a vicious cycle. And it can basically run out. Okay? With CMOS, that's actually less of a problem. With BJT, that's a serious problem. With BJT, you almost always have to have a resistor in the emitter. Otherwise, the system is going to self-heat and just generate more and more current, and that's in BJT terms, that's called the runoff. It just keeps on increasing. But it's basically hidden feedbacks that exist because of the physics of the device. Whereas now if you put that resistor there, when the current passes through that resistor, it actually changes your VGS. You don't have the same VGS. So let's say something happens and you get more current passing through the resistor. And that more current is going to heat that up, but then, or heats up and you get more current, but then that current is going to pass through this RS, and that's going to lower your VGS. The VGS is actually going to go down. So VGS goes down, ID goes back down. Even though that it starts going up, and then because of the fact that Vs is no longer ground and rather is connected through a resistor, so it counters it. So it goes up and then goes down. And it goes up, and then so it stabilizes, as opposed to keep going up forever, right? So this thing is there for stability reasons.
Current Kn is changing with the ratio.
Mobility.
Does it behave like, say, on a macro scale, like if you have a steel beam between, like expanded contracts? Is that kind of?
No, it's less of a function of a dimension. It's mobility. Mobility is a very sensitive function of temperature.
That's how well the electrons can like move through the substance, right? Yeah.
And this is actually this is a beautiful visual that you can think of. So electrons are moving, and atoms are moving. And let's take a snapshot. Assume atoms are not moving, right? So if atoms are not moving, electrons see tunnels, and they go through these tunnels, and they don't really interact with the atoms. Now start moving the atoms. So sometimes the atom could be actually on the way of electron passing, so they interact more with the atoms. So what's vibration of the atom? Heat. So you increase heat, the atom starts moving more, so they actually come in front of the electron more and more. That's a very crude picture. That couldn't be farther from the truth of what exactly is going on, but it's a good practice of visualization in order to realize what is going on. Reality, quantum mechanically speaking, heat is phonons. Heat is like any other energy, has units, and those units are very much like electrons. It's like very much like photons. They are units. And these units of different domains of energy, they interact with each other. Now, heat generates high energy phonons. And high energy phonons, they come closer to the energies of the electrons, at which point they interact with each other more. So they scatter off of each other. So they transfer energy a lot more efficiently between the electron and phonon. So heat can, therefore change. But it depends. There's some material that, or ranges that you can actually increase the temperature and have the inverse effect based on what is going on. Because it's all about how energies of electrons relate to the energies of phonons. Okay. Any other questions? Are you comfortable with these kind of questions that I said I'm going to ask you?
After a lot of practice.
What? What?
Like the quiz question and the stuff that you went over in class, like I do understand it, and beyond just like you're writing it on the board and I'm going, like I do feel like I understand it, but I struggled a lot with the homework.
It's because the homework's full of bullshit, and it's like design this, and there's all these parameters, so it's like pages of algebra to even remotely get close to the question. Like I was kind of thinking the same thing as John. It's not a critique of you, but it'd be really helpful if you gave us circuits like that with a simple question the way you did, and like I'm not saying replace your homework, keep doing things the way you are. This class is good, but like additional help would be great because I'm at like 70%. Like I get it, but like I can't just do it in 30 seconds, you know. And so like a question like the circuit you just drew and said find output. There you go. Like it's a lot less. Find this is lambda. Find this GN. Find this blah blah blah. Like the homework questions were like almost a paragraph of information.
Yeah, more practice with analysis rather than just the math.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I feel like we waste a lot of time trying to figure out like what is exactly even trying to tell us. So if you were to look over the homework and say, oh, this is what I actually want you to work on, then that's something that we can be useful because some of the homework already has like capacitors in there and all this other stuff. So it's not something we're going over, but it's something that they're asking us. So it's hard to look at our notes. Okay, we went over this, but then when we look at the homework, it's like.
So, I hear you. You're struggling, right?
That's how you want.
Good. I don't have to continue. Now you know me. Come on, guys. Yours.
Like for me on my homework, I looked it up on my iPad. I spent about 10 hours on this last homework. Most of it was just trying to figure out how to do the algebra.
Just an hour?
Yes, do more.
It honestly feels like a waste of time.
It is not.
It feels that way because when I come in.
Yeah,
and
I
do
know.
the
When
quiz-
you're down in a well, like you're trapped, it always feels pretty bad until you come out of it and look back and say, "Oh my God, I learned a lot coming out of that trap."
Well, the thing is that maybe if how you were teaching went with the homework, then it would be easier to apply.
Yeah, you know, the more I teach, I hear people say that, and that more and more motivates me to write my own books. But right now I can't do it. That's the trouble.
But
Because
what you could do is say, okay, take the circuit from figure 1162, which was a circuit that we had, and answer this question.
But wait. So I really want to learn from this. I'm sincere. So 1162. Let's
But that's
see.
not a good example because like that one wasn't fair. That question was fair, but can somebody come up with a question that like was actually
Like
fair?
1183.
Why
Yeah,
not just do
1183.
the AC analysis and just not do the DC at all if possible? Just draw the AC circuit and just solve
So
it.
see, I get it. You're saying in the homework it asks us to do 1,000 things, but then in the quiz you're asking one thing. Do you want me to ask 1,000 things? Is that what you said?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I spend more time trying to figure out the little algebra intricacies of the questions rather than.
Don't. See,
We have
you have to have reached a certain level of maturity in your learning. Okay? You are, guys, I've always said this, and I like these kind of discussions more than the material in the book. The objective for me in any of the classes that I teach is actually has nothing to do with that book. I don't care what's in the book. I'm hoping that I inspire you, not to teach you, to inspire you to learn how to learn. Okay? That's a lifelong, and I know what you're gonna say. You say, oh, what we care about grades, we have to have good grades. And people look at our grades, and grade is a result of learning. Okay, if you, I've been you. I've had grades. I took quizzes, so I know what I'm talking about. When I learned in any of the classes I took, which was much more than the classes that you've taken so far, because I did 2 masters and 1 PhD, so I did a lot more than you've done so far. When I learned, the grade came as a result of me learning. When I got a grade, A, I didn't learn anything. A lot of times I got A's, but I really didn't learn anything, right? So you have to find a way to learn. And all of what you're saying, for example, you're saying, okay, I look at this and I have to do a lot of algebra before I get to what's important. Don't. That's part of finding out what's important. See, learning is, okay, what's important? You have to be able to see through clutter, right? There's a lot of stuff that are not, and so you're basically saying, hey, come to class, tell me what's important. And then I'm going to only learn what's important. And that way, I'm not going to have to spend time figuring out on my own what's important. That's what you're saying. You don't say it that way, but you actually really saying that. You're saying, hey, why don't you tell me what's important so that I only focus on what's important? Then what's your job? Your job is to come to the class, listen to me, and through what I tell you, try to figure out what's important. Okay? And then you go back home and keep on doing that. And you're, by no means I feel like you have to be able to do it just right off. You're going to struggle. You're going to go to 10 hours and come back and see, oh, 9 hours of that 10 hours was wasted time. But did you learn which part was important through this practice of focusing on what was not important? If I assign this next set of questions, would you do the same? Would you still focus on what's not important the whole 10 hours that you have at hand?
The problem is it's so hard to identify what's important because it doesn't line
Yeah,
up
sure.
with what we're doing. I am sure.
Sure.
I can't do anything because I have to go through all those processes to be able to verify my answer. Because how else would I know if I did it right or wrong?
What?
Going through the whole process of the whole question.
Sure.
Right?
I understand. But see, the AC analysis here was part of what we did. Well, maybe this example was not really a good example because I assume that specific example was not one of the problems they had. It had a lot of not important stuff. Give me an example that did have something like that. Something that we can discuss and.
What I was really asking for was, outside of homework, an additional set of questions that are kind of like that, so we can practice what we are trying to learn. Because like when you keep doing the same problems over and over again, you know what the answer is. That doesn't really help you. If there was other questions where, okay, I haven't seen this a million times, can I actually do it? That's really what I was asking for. But sure, I'll come up with questions.
But I guess those kind of questions we're going to see more and more in other sets of problems. Like the next set of problems is not going to have the same problems. So you're going to see more examples of that and maybe more complicated. But let's continue on what you were saying about the clutter, the fact that these problems they ask you to do so much that it's hard to not do them before you can figure out what's important or what's not. Can you give me an example, like one of the problems?
For example, find our out of question 66. 1166.
Okay, so that is one of the examples that you feel like is not important?
No, I'm saying that like to actually find R out is way more complex than like what we talked about in class today.
No, it's not. this is exactly what we discussed in class today. So this is your output, and you're looking for the output resistance, right? You're looking into the collector of a BJT where there is a resistor in the emitter. There is a resistance transformation right here. And we have done this, looking into the collector or the drain of a transistor. Where there is a resistor in the source or the emitter, you get a larger resistance because that resistance gets multiplied by the gain of this stage, or GM R naught of this stage, and shows up in the collector. So there is a GM R naught of this transistor times that 1K that shows up here. Looking down, you see the R naught of this other transistor, the two in parallel, is the output resistance. This is exactly what we discussed today with the impedance transformation and what you see. Very relevant practice, and you have to do this. You have to be able to do this. This is exactly what we discussed.
So
This is what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to show you this circuit and tell you what is the output resistance of this circuit. And we did this, and the output resistance is what you see down here, which is R naught of this transistor, and what you look up, which is R naught of that transistor, but added to GM R naught times that resistor. So what is wrong with this?
how do you look at the overall, I don't know if that's the one. How do you look at the overall circuit? And because I understand, okay, this is where my V out is, and this is how I'm going to do it in reference to this, but if you're doing the whole circuit, how do you figure out, okay, this is everything that's dependent on that, and this is the only area I need to look at? Because you did this automatically, you wrote this, and that's fine. And then I'm doing the AC analysis, and I'm writing everything just to see what it has depending on what. And I honestly don't do the T model, because I can't get it, I don't understand it, I can't do it. So I always do the pi model. And I reference everything, I put everything in relation to something else, and then I end up with the answer, but it takes me pages upon pages.
Okay, so I mean, if you have time, you can come to my office and I help you with T model if you care, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. But if one thing that I fear in this statement, these are not only, there are other people like me, I'm sure. I've had enough discussion with the students to recognize patterns, right? And they say I'm good with this, but I'm not good with that. That's just an illusion. You just don't. This is an illusion. Just know that you're saying it's an illusion. And the problem, but the problem is, I mean, we both. If you and I, there's anything to learn from each other, I can't say, hey, no, you're wrong, completely wrong. Don't talk to me about this. If you're about to learn something from me, you have to open up. So I give you that what you're saying has some merit. So I'm opening up. Unless you open up, you're not going to learn anything from me. So you're closing. You're saying, no, I don't want you to tell me anything. Tell me what I want. No, listen to me. It's important. You're saying, I don't want to do TMO, right?
It doesn't click. And I've tried it multiple times.
Did you let me try it for you?
Whenever you explain on the board, it's even more confusing.
Open up.
I'm serious.
No, open up. Come to my office hours. It's a fair. I'm opening up. I'm giving you the merits of the doubts that maybe you're right. Maybe there's something about T model that shouldn't click or doesn't click, right? But what if I have a way of explaining it that I haven't explained it in the class yet that is going to help you? But that aside, let's just put that aside. You look at this circuit, right? and you're saying, I have to do all this small signal for this circuit before even I get to a point. Yeah, you come to class and you just draw this part and you say this and that. That's the point. That's the point. You look at this and you see the clutter. And I'm trying to convey to you, cut through the clutter. This is a box. That's a box. This goes to this box. That goes to that box. Any box, you can model that box with a resistor. Any box. Is this a box? I can put a circle around anything and call it a box, can't I? Can you allow me that? So this is a box. That's a box. There's a piece of wire going into that box. There's a piece of wire going to this box. Any box in the world, I can model that box with a resistor. That's called the Thevenin model, right? I don't care about the Thevenin voltage at this point. I just care about the Thevenin resistance. So I want to know what resistance. Once I did that, don't you agree that the resistance that I see here is the resistance of that box in parallel with the resistance of this box? Cut through the clutter. So you look at, now, next step is this box any familiar to whatever I've done before? Yes. In this class, we have done a similar problem at least twice, I'm sure. Once looking into the collector, once looking into the drain. Actually, I think looking into the drain, we did it twice, just in this class. By the way, this is something that we did in the electronic once, if you took it with me. At least another two times, and we did like 4 homeworks out of looking into the drain or a collector of a transistor, finding out what the resistance is, right? So at this point, you don't even have to do any of this small signal model to find out, because this is the stage of development in this domain. See, is electronics 2 for everyone? No. Should everyone take electronics 2? No. If you're taking electronics 2, that tells me you're serious about this stuff. This is part. No. What do you mean required? You required for who?
Electrical engineering.
Electrical, yeah, exactly. Electrical engineers. So you are serious about becoming electrical engineers. What do you mean? I mean, the electrical engineers carry there's some weight with. This is electrical. What is electrical engineering if this is not electrical engineering? Like it's going to a doctor and say, hey, I don't quite want to know about hearts. I just want to know about fingers. What are you talking about? This is electrical engineering. Yeah, maybe later on you're lucky and every patient comes to you with a finger problem, but then you can't just say, I just want to know about fingers. So at this point, this is your stuff. You have to know it. If you're an electrical engineer, this is your bread and butter. This is a piece of cake. This should be. So yeah, you're saying, oh, no, it's complicated, blah, blah. Okay, I can do this in 30 seconds. You don't have to. Do the small signal model do it with pi model. Doesn't matter. Do it with pi model. I assure you, I go from 0 pi model, like tiny. I put the pi model with the resistor there, write all the equations. It's still going to take us 15 minutes to figure out what that resistance is. You have 30.
For you.
No, for me it takes 30 seconds. Come on, just 30 seconds. I'm saying for me doing it like you, it takes 15 minutes. Then you have 30 minutes.
Your expectations of it are just to look at something and be like, oh, this is the equation.
That certainly is my expectation, but I don't test you based on my expectation. If I were to test you based on expectation, about 99% of you would fail. But I test you based on what really is the bottom of my expectation, to be able to do the small signal model, at least, because doing a small signal model and writing the equation was so electronics 1. Now that we are doing electronics 2, I'm still giving you that because you need grades or whatever.
Okay, so I actually want to create this question. I found my RF, but the problem is that when I was trying to find things like GMs, for instance, I got lost on where my VBEs were when I was doing this question. And that was the real issue I had with this one.
So you have to do it a few times, right? So you have trouble, come to me, ask a question in office time, ask a question during the class time. But once you get a handle of that, then